Hi, besties! Welcome back to my YouTube channel, The Art of Learning and Unlearning. I'm your host, Lovely, and on today's episode, we're going to continue part 2 of the importance of teaching children boundaries. As I have mentioned before, I have listed 6 practical tips for teaching children boundaries early and the importance of teaching them boundaries at an early age. So I decided to add 3 more points because I didn't want the previous part 1 to be too long. I wanted to cut it in half and then do 3 points in the first one and then 3 points in the second one. So my next point that I wanted to make is to use everyday situation as a teaching moment. So, for instance, when conflicts arise during playtime at school or social settings, use them as real life opportunities to talk about setting boundaries at that current moment. For example, how did it make you feel when your friend didn't listen to you when you asked them to stop? Then guide them in how to respond assertively and respectfully. Because remember, no is a complete sentence. So remind them of that often. Then the next point I wanted to make is model healthy boundaries at home. To be honest with you, a lot of my training, all of my home trainings were just that, home trainings. I learned all of those things at home. So children learn most by examples. They're watching what you're doing, how you're doing it. Do you have boundaries yourself? If you don't have boundaries, it's really hard to teach someone else how to respect your boundaries because you don't know how to show them and you don't know how to set them for yourselves. So show them what boundaries look like in your relationship by saying no and by saying yes when you are okay with something being done. Especially when you're overwhelmed, you want to show that you can say no when you feel overwhelmed, overstressed, or overextended. Expressing your needs respectfully and not tolerating disrespect, those are things that they are paying attention to because those are things that I paid attention to growing up in my household. Then the next point I wanted to make is revisit the conversation often because you have to remember, just like adults, we forget all the time. So imagine kids, they forget even more frequently than we do. Boundaries they're not a one-time lesson. As your child grows, so should the depth of your conversations. What my mother did with me is that every time we went out to the market, every time we spent time outside of the household, she would we would have those little conversations and she would somehow integrate that into the conversations that we're having and make it a part of our learning lessons. For instance, she would tell me, what if somebody were to want to touch you in this area or in that area? What would you say? Then I would respond, no. Do not touch my little garden area, and those were the little conversations that we would have, like very childlike and very like crazy scenarios that we would play out. But those were the little scenarios that made me remember those conversations even in adulthood. Now that I'm older, as I got older and was not with her anymore, I remembered those conversations and I kept them playing in my head and be like, okay, listen, this is my garden. I have to nurture it. I have to take care of it. I'm in charge of that garden, and other people are only allowed to come in my garden if I allow them to come into my garden space. So I was very well aware of how to treat my garden, how to take care of it, who to allow in and who not to allow in, how the people that I do allow into my garden should be taking care of my garden and treating it as well. But those are all things that you learn as you get older. And your parents have... Sorry, disregard Zeus here. He loves making his presence be known and be heard. But those are things that I learned, and those are how some of the conversations that my mother and I would have as we're walking to the market, as we're going to the grocery stores. She would always ask me little questions. Because the thing is, what made sense at age 4 will evolve by age 10 or 16, or by whatever conversation you have with them at age 6. For me, I personally remember everything from 5th grade and up, right? All the conversations that I had with my mother, I remember those. And so I always try to keep the door open for honesty and judgment-free dialogue. So one thing I did appreciate that my mother did with me is that she always kept an open and honest conversation going. You know, she never really tried to hide too much from me. And if I had questions, she would literally answer them and explain them, because obviously I'm asking. And that's the type of mother I desire to be with my children. I want to have an open communication. I want us to have honest conversations and judgment-free dialogues about those type of things that everybody's hush-hush about, because that is actually how you're going to prevent them from having a lot of damages into adulthood. Now, keep in mind, by planting these seeds early, you are giving your child a lifelong gift. The ability to navigate the world with clarity, courage, and compassion. You're not just protecting them, you are preparing them to become people who honor themselves and others in every stage of life. Because quite frankly, that's exactly what that has done for me by having boundaries at an early age as a child. My Caribbean mother was full of wisdom, now that I look back on it. You know, as a kid, when your parents are telling you something, you're always like, okay, you never really take it so hard. Like, you never really think they know what they're talking about, because, you know, you think you know better, you think you know everything. But looking back at it now, I'm just like, wow, my mother told me all these random things that half the time I'll be like, is this even appropriate for us to be talking about? But because she's my mother, I trusted her. I'm like, okay, obviously it's appropriate, because she wants the best for me, and she wants me to not repeat some mistakes that she has seen in other people or in other people's kids, which I really appreciated it. But she really was full of wisdom. Those small conversations on the daily walks to the market, they truly helped shape the way that I viewed myself as a person, my body, and the future life that I wanted to have for myself. She would literally have conversations with me about weddings. Like, I remember she took me to this wedding one time, and she was like, look how beautiful this lady that she looks on her wedding day, you know? And the reason why she was able to have such a beautiful wedding is because she was just so respectful, and she had boundaries. She made sure that no one messed with her or mistreated her or anything like that. And now she was able to marry an honorable man. Those are things that stuck with you as a kid, because you're looking at this white dress, you're looking at this beautiful bride, and you're just like, wow, that's going to be me one day if I behave in a great manner, if I take good care of myself. So I would leave you guys with this note. Let's raise a generation that's not only kind, but also self-aware, strong, and safe. Guys, thank you for checking in, and thank you for clocking in with me. If this resonate with you at all, or if you know anyone who would benefit from hearing this series on setting boundaries and teaching your children boundaries early, please feel free to leave a comment, and share the video as well. See you guys in the next video. Bye. And remember, if no one told you this, I love you.